Hey there, ACCA students. In this video, I'm going to share my top tips to help you get a pass on paper APM. My first tip is to avoid unjustified answers. What do I mean by that? Imagine we are evaluating APM as an exam, and we write the following: APM is a difficult exam. While that might be true, I did not earn credit because I did not justify my answer. How can I fix it? APM is a difficult exam because the pass rates are low and many candidates need to resit, sometimes numerous times. I added the word because, and that forced me to write more, to justify my answer, to support my argument with some evidence from the story. Here's another example. I'm in the process of evaluating a report, and I've written up the report should include EVA as a metric. While that's a valid idea, I did not earn credit because that is not justified. How do I fix it? The report should include EVA as a metric because the company's high-level aim is to increase shareholder value. EVA is better than return on investment because it considers the opportunity cost to the investors of providing funds, the weighted average cost of capital, and it removes the distortions of the non-cash expenses. So I fixed my answer by doing two things, and both of those included using the word because. First, I justified my idea. I said why EVA is better, and then I developed it further by linking it to the story, comparing it to what we found in the story, ROI. This is what the examining team wants you to do. This is also the #1 cause of a marginal fail, in my opinion. So make sure you justify all of your ideas, everything you write, even if you feel like you are stating the obvious. My next tip is to pay close attention to the verbs in APM. You're going to see assess, evaluate, critically evaluate, recommend. You're not going to see describe or discuss very often. So make sure that you are doing what the examining team wants you to do, and that is expressing some kind of judgment. Here's an example. Assess the impact of the external environment on performance management at the company. Look what I've written. We see that there is one supplier of the important raw material. The material is rare and expensive. At this point, no credit is earned. All I'm doing is restating the scenario. Avoid this. This means the bargaining power of the supplier is high. Now I'm on track to start earning marks, but I did not express any judgment. At this point, I'm really still describing the external environment. Here's how I fix it. The bargaining power of the supplier is high because the raw material is both expensive and scarce, and there are limited suppliers of this resource. I'm writing more succinctly, I'm jumping right to my point, but now I need to add more. This high cost will harm profits and be a concern to the venture capitalist investors who want high returns. That is what you need to do. Notice, I first assessed the bargaining power of the suppliers, linking it to the story with the word because. But then I really answered the question when I expressed some judgment. I said that this high cost is a bad thing. And again, I linked it directly to the story. My next tip is to always give your answer a structure. Whatever you are writing in APM, Structure it. Group your ideas together. Use headings and subheadings. And how do you set your structure? Well, you need to find the embedded tasks. In this question, I had to go into the exhibit. In the exhibit, it explains exactly what the CEO wants. The CEO wants a critical comparison of zero-based budgeting with the existing method of budgeting. Notice that word critical comparison. Don't be afraid to go negative. That's also a clue that you have some skepticism marks coming at you. So when you're negative, make sure you are justifying all of your points. Now, this should include a description of the ZBB approach and how it fits with Belivat's plans and aims. So do exactly what the CEO wants here. Structure your answer based on each of those asks. Here's another example. The CEO requires you to provide an understanding of the basic principles of value-based management, Section 1, VBM explained, and then evaluate VBM compared to the existing performance dashboard. That's where you use judgment, evaluation, pros and cons. Now, he wants your evaluation to include both how VBM would affect the different management levels, strategic, tactical, and operational, and how its implementation would affect the organization. So before you begin writing, use all of that to set up headings in your answer. First ask. Second ask. Structure your answer on strategic, tactical, operational. Finally, give a heading for how implementation would affect the organization. So, before I begin writing, I set these headings. That's going to ensure that I'm answering the question that is asked. It's going to help me manage my time. It's going to help me find the information that I need as I read those exhibits. My next tip is to develop your ideas beyond one sentence, another common cause of APM marginal fails. In business, we're so used to writing short, concise documents. We use bullet points. We don't want to waste the time of our reader. However, in APM, you have to justify all your points, and justification takes more than one short, simple sentence. How do you do this? Well, use examples from the company or the industry in the scenario. Say, for example, often in your exam. That's going to help you get follow-on marks. That's going to help you get business acumen marks. Use linking words and phrases to develop your idea further. Say also, however, in addition. Here's something that I wrote. Implementation of VBM will be difficult. No credit for that idea. It's unjustified. How can I fix it? Employees will now be assessed on non-financial factors, for example, quality, instead of the traditional financial metrics they're used to. Also, managers will need to explain the benefits of the new systems well and be supportive if employees don't reach their new targets at first. So I'm developing my ideas, the expressions for example, and also force me to do this. Here's another one. The company should switch to ABC because it will reduce costs and improve efficiency. I'm off to a good start here, but this answer is too generic. This looks like copy-paste from some textbook. So we need to tailor this to the company in question. XYZ should switch to ABC. That's my recommendation. Now I'm supporting that. This will allow managers to better understand the full cost of the painting process because they have information about the costs of the activities being consumed. answer justified, answer developed, answer linked to the scenario. I take it further. Managers can then reduce the non-value-adding activities of transportation and storage. This will improve operational efficiency and reduce costs. I've justified those points with information from the scenario. We're looking at a very well-developed idea, potentially 2 marks here, and potentially business acumen marks, as my examples are well linked to the scenario. In APM, 100% you're going to see KPIs come up somewhere. You often need to suggest them, evaluate, and you might need to recommend KPIs based on the mission, based on the objectives, based on the external environment that you find in the scenario. How to deal with KPIs. Here's a requirement. Evaluate the suggested KPIs and suggest improvements. To evaluate KPIs, you need to express judgment. Are the KPIs good or bad? And to do that, you have to answer the question, what are the KPIs measuring? Are they measuring the right things, the right business areas? So we found out that quality was a critical success factor for this company, but the suggested KPIs are not measuring quality. So I say that, that's my idea, that becomes a heading. Company X is struggling with quality because complaints and returns are rising. They need to monitor this more closely to avoid losing market share in the competitive retail clothing industry. I've used lots of clues from the first exhibit, the company information and the external environment, and then I went to the next exhibit where they got into the problems that the company is facing. Customers will stop paying their high prices if quality is perceived to be dropping, and they'll easily switch to the competition. This is a well-developed idea. We're looking for 1, if not 2 marks for this body of writing. Now, I'm answering the question that is asked, and I'm suggesting the improvement. Adding percentage of units sold that are returned will help the company understand if they are resolving their manufacturing problems. Justified improvement, credit is earned. You might be asked to evaluate a performance report, and we can do this from several perspectives. First, let's look at the metrics in that report. Is the report measuring the right areas of performance? And we can go to the mission of the company and the objectives, especially if this report is for the board of directors at their annual meeting. No information on business segments. We see that the story was about a national clothing company, and I developed my idea like this. A national clothing company will have different segments. For example, men's, women's, and children's. Using my business acumen there, developing my idea in the context of this industry. Directors need information about these segments to understand what is driving sales and costs. For example, which segment is most profitable or growing the fastest? However, the report doesn't provide this info. So that's a nicely developed idea. I'm earning technical marks and professional marks. When you are evaluating a performance report, there are often marks for some general comments. For example, if the report is missing charts and graphs will help the directors gain more insight into performance. They'll be able to spot trends more easily. Make sure you make comments like this, but limit those comments to 3 or 4. The bulk of your evaluation should be based on what those metrics are covering or not covering. My next tip, if you are stuck on some requirement, you're not sure what to write, just be practical, get into a specific... My next tip, if you are stuck on some requirement that seems strange to you, be practical, close your ideas, imagine you work at that company, do everything, write everything from a practical perspective. Here's an example. The requirement, describe the difficulties of implementing and using the balanced scorecard. At first read, I'm unfamiliar with that. I'm not sure what to write. I close my eyes. I imagine I'm working in this company. I'm linking everything I write to the exhibits, to the information in the exhibits that I found. I'm also structuring my answer on the 2 areas that I need to write about. Difficulties implementing, difficulties using. So I've got 7 marks. A bare minimum would be 3.5, rounded up to 4. So if I can come up with 4 ideas around this difficult requirement, it's good enough. Let me move on to something I'm more familiar with. So, difficulties implementing. IT systems. It's a big company. These are 2 areas that'll make rolling out this new system difficult. Company X focuses primarily on financial control. However, the new metrics to report on will be non-financial. For example, customer satisfaction. They will need some new ERP system that enables capturing this non-financial information. Company X is also a national chain. This means they have branches all around the country, so it will be a challenging project to roll out the new system to the whole company. In addition to just the software, they'll also need it to be cloud-based, so all branches, big and small, can access the software over the internet. So it's a practical difficulties that I'm writing about, linking to the story, demonstrating my business acumen, trying to make my answer as helpful as possible, framed in the context of what I found in the exhibits. My next tip is to avoid dense academic style writing. You don't have time to craft a perfect essay. Your answer is never going to look like the model solution. Here, look at this. This model of benchmarking suffers the drawback that it will often involve non-financial data whose production is perhaps less robust than the financial systems involving subjective judgments. It sounds fancy, it looks great, but A, I don't understand it, and B, I don't have the time to hone, to edit, to craft an answer like this. I'm going to write in a simple, direct style. A problem with this type of benchmarking is that it uses non-financial data. That's my problem. Let me develop my argument. Non-financial may be more difficult to use because it is subjective. For example, customer satisfaction score is based on opinions, which then need to be quantified somehow on a feedback form. Easier to write, easier to understand. Do this in the exam. Active voice, short, simple sentences. Make your point. Make an example, and then move on. My next tip, get in the right mindset when you're sitting there in the exam hall, when you're sitting there at home waiting for the exam to start. Close your eyes. Imagine you want to get a job there. Try to provide helpful advice to the CEO. Will they hire you based on your answer? Everything that you do should be answering the question that the CEO has asked, helping them solve their problems. This is the mindset you need to be in. My last tip, make sure you get the professional marks. Now, professional marks are easy to get if you answer the question that is asked and you take my advice that I've shared with you in the previous tips. The first professional skill you need to demonstrate is communication, and you only get the communication marks in question 1. So you need to make the report look like a report. You do this with those headers and that introduction. You know how to do this. You've learned about this in the examiner's reports. Next, you signpost your document with headings and subheadings. And you get these headings and subheadings from the embedded requirements, as I showed you earlier in this video. Now, group your ideas together. Group your pros and your cons together. Don't start drifting into long academic definitions. Answer the question that is asked. However, if you are using a model and that model has been asked for, there is often one discretionary mark for explaining why that model might be appropriate or inappropriate. So you can do that, but don't get into the long-winded technical definitions. And link your answer to the story. Will they hire you based on your answer? Do all of this. You're earning passing communication skills marks. Next, you'll need to demonstrate commercial acumen skills. You do this. Avoid being generic. Everything you write should be specific to the business that you found in the exhibits. Try to make your advice, your recommendations, your examples realistic. They should fit in the context of the business story. Now, if there are any constraints to some of the ideas that you've recommended, always mention that. Say, however, we'll need a new information system to implement the balanced scorecard. This could be costly for the company. Impress the marker with insightful, useful ideas, and you will be earning passing business acumen marks. A and E marks. Give a conclusion that is supported by your argument. Do exactly what the requirement asks you to do. When you are evaluating and critically evaluating, you've got to use pros and cons. Everything should be supported with evidence. We talked about that earlier. Avoid the unjustified points. Try to give a balanced view, show pros and cons. Tie everything you do together with a conclusion. And does this help the CEO make their decision? If the answer to this is yes, you're going to be earning passing A and E marks. Skepticism. This comes from taking a challenging tone when appropriate. When they ask you to assess if something is useful, assess the usefulness of implementing the radio frequency ID system. They might ask you to assess if a model is useful as a performance management system. For example, the Boston Consulting Group matrix. Can this be used as a performance management system? It might have some useful areas, but by itself, it's not going to be a complete performance management system. Make sure you say that. Make sure you say why. They might ask you to assess a reward scheme, evaluation of costs and benefits. Make sure you are critically assessing when they ask for that. Don't be afraid to go negative. When you develop those negative ideas, you'll be earning the skepticism marks. My final tip for the professional marks: don't stress about them, just answer the question that is asked. If your answer is providing useful advice, if you're doing exactly what you found in the embedded tasks, you're going to be earning the technical and the professional marks. This was explained in several of the recent examiners' reports. APM team, those are my most important tips. Please take them on board. It will help you get closer to a pass. Good luck on your upcoming APM exam.